Good afternoon. I'm Henry Garrido. I'm the Executive Director of AFSCME District Council 37 and a member of Climate Just New York Executive Committee. Thank you all for joining us. Whether you've been here with us all day or you're just joining us now, it's been quite a day. We've heard from a great group of presenters on a number of topics that are crucial for the future of millions of workers and for the future of our planet. We've been reminded that now is the moment when we can and must act. And we've had some great conversations about taking actions and what it looks like. We started the day talking about the inextricable link between climate change and inequality, and the fact that we need to take both on at the same time. We talked about the importance of labor leading on climate, and Vinny's panel brought out three fundamental points for us. First, labor playing a leading role on climate means we can push farther with bold climate actions. We have a lot to bring to the table in driving climate action, and labor is going to play a central role in making sure we respond at the scale science demands. Number two, there is a huge opportunity to build new industries and create new union jobs. And number three, looking out for a just transition from fossil fuel for workers and their communities requires having labor at the table, plain and simple. We talked about a green recovery from the current economic crisis and the fact that the decarbonization offers the best opportunity to put millions of people back to work. We dug into the sometimes difficult questions. How do we ensure a just transition? We looked at specific industries and sectors, from energy to building to transportation. And it was a great session on building climate jobs organizations in new states. I want to share a few thoughts from the panel I shared earlier in the afternoon on climate change, racial justice, and economic justice. I started the panel by highlighting one of the most fundamental environmental disasters that this nation has ever seen. And that's what is happening in Flint, Michigan, where despite people of color, Black and brown people, representing only 14% of the entire state's population in Michigan, 84% of the zip codes that were affected by the problems with the water system were community of color. And we have seen this manifested in other parts of the country. We've seen where in many cases, the zip code that you live determines your life expectancy, determines the air quality that you breathe, determines the quality of the water that you do, your access to quality healthcare, your access to green energy jobs, and we cannot allow that to happen anymore. So I was proud to be a part of that, and I want to thank my co-members of the panel who participated and provided insight on how this intersectionality between climate change and racial justice and economic justice is so intertwined that we cannot forget what the Black Lives Matter movement has meant to many people of color and how we can integrate that while pushing back on bad ideas on white supremacy in other areas. So I want to thank the other members of the committee who participated in that. Overall, I think today has served to emphasize what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now. Not only have we raised the Earth's temperature more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit, with impacts far worse than we have expected, not only has the economic inequality gotten to the point where 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency, not only have we seen climate change hit low-income communities and communities of color the hardest, and compound the effects of systemic racism, we have also had a public health crisis and millions of people who have lost their jobs. All of these things have converged. This is not a small moment, but the solutions we've talked about today can meet that moment. More than anything, we want today's event to spare action. Whether you are an elected official who can enact sweeping legislation or policies, union climate activists who can make sure that the community's offshore wind project goes on forward, or a citizen who can take a few minutes to vote for the future they want to see. Now is the time for action. We want to cap the day by honoring champions of this work. Climate Jobs New York and the Climate Jobs New York Education Fund are awarding their Build Back Better Award to 4 extraordinary leaders. Nella, Pineda-Marcon, Gina McCarthy, John Samuelsen, and Senator Chuck Schumer. Before introducing each of the awardees, I want to recognize the unions represented in our executive committee, whose leadership make everything Climate Jobs New York does possible. They are the Building and Construction Trade Council of Greater New York, the Building and Construction Trades Council of Nassau and Suffolk counties, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 3, the IBEW, 3rd District, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 30, the Laborers, Local 79, the Long Island Federation of Labor, the New York City Central Labor Council, the New York State AFL-CIO, the New York State Nurses Association, 32 BJSCIU, the Transport Workers Unions of America, the Transport Workers Union Local 100, the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentice of Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industries of the U.S. and Canada, the Utility Workers Union of America, Local 1 and 2, the Communication Workers of America, District 1, and, of course, my very own AFSCME District Council 37. I want to thank Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Rockefeller Brother Foundation, the North Life Foundation, the Open Society Center, and the Energy Foundation for the generous support of our work, and to all of the other sponsors of tonight's award. Thank you so much for stepping up and to support Climate Jobs Vision and for taking on both climate change and inequality. Thank you. It is, with that, my pleasure to introduce the inspiring recipient of the Build Back Better Award. Our first award goes to Nella Pineda-Marcon. Nella is RN and an assistant nurse care coordinator at Mount Sinai, St. Luke's Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Department. She has been a member of the New York State Nurses Association for more than 30 years, and she has served as Director at Large of NYSNA's Board of Directors, as a delegate in her local bargaining unit, and as the chair of NYSNA's Climate Justice and Disaster Relief Committee. As part of her ongoing work to drive climate action, Nella spoke at the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C. on behalf of NYSNA. She has also volunteered on several medical missions with the NYSNA RN Relief Network. We are pleased to recognize Nella, a true leader on climate. And in honoring Nella, we are also proud to recognize the work of nurses and other workers who have been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, taking on this public health crisis for the rest of us.
My name is Nella Pineda-Marcon. I am a nurse at Mount Sinai St. Luke's and Mount Sinai West. I am a proud union member and climate activist. I am on the board of directors of the New York State Nurses Association and chair of our Climate Justice and Disaster Relief Committee. I am incredibly humbled and honored to accept this award And I could not have done this critical work without the help of so many nurses who proudly consider themselves climate activists as well. As nurses on the front lines of patient care, we have seen firsthand the destruction that climate and environmental justice issues have had on the health of our patients. Unfortunately, we have also had a front row seat to the horrors of COVID-19. Over 32,000 people have died from the coronavirus in New York so far. Black and brown communities have felt both the health and economic impacts of COVID-19 disproportionately. This is unacceptable. We need to be able to definitely say once and for all that climate change is a public health crisis and systemic racism is a public health crisis. Nurses are healers, and we have a duty to serve the public. We know that these major issues are keeping our patients sick. Oftentimes, they are the root problem of other symptoms that present themselves. It is impossible to talk about healthcare without talking about the social determinants of health. It is impossible to talk about the social determinants of health without talking about climate and environmental justice. 250,000 people die prematurely because of air pollution each year. The massive amount of pollutants that are being pumped into our city air are causing an increase in chronic asthma conditions in our most vulnerable communities. We know that exposure to pollution and pollution-related health conditions like asthma make people more susceptible to COVID-19. Unfortunately, many examples such as this and with these kinds of links exist. This is thoroughly unjust. Since the start of COVID-19 pandemic, over 1.8 million New Yorkers have lost their jobs. Our unemployment rate is the highest it's been since the Great Depression. Once again, communities of color have been economically impacted the hardest. We must take immediate action to put people back to work in good, green jobs with high wages and good benefits in their communities. Creating green economy that works for all of us must be the priority. Our future and planet depend on it. The 43,000 members of the New York State Nurses Association commend the essential work that Climate Jobs New York has undertaken. We must face climate change head-on through renewable energy projects and a true, just transition. I know that together as labor, we can make this happen, that we can create a brighter, cleaner, and more hopeful future. We owe this to those we serve, to our communities, our families, and future generations. We owe this to ourselves. Thank you for the opportunity to stand with you today. Let's continue this work and make our dream of a world that runs on clean energy a reality.
Thank you, Nella. And thank you again for all your work and leadership. Our next honoree is a remarkable leader and a force of nature. Gina McCarthy is president and CEO of the NRDC, one of the most effective environmental action organizations and an important partner of Climate Jobs. Gina has been a leading advocate for smart, successful strategies to protect public health and the environment for more than 30 years. She has served as the 13th administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under President Obama, and her leadership led to significant federal, state, and local actions on climate issues related to the environment. energy, transportation, and the economy. She has also served in state government in both Connecticut and Massachusetts as a professor at Harvard's Chan School of Public Health. We are very pleased to honor Gina McCarthy.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to join all of you, and I want to thank Climate Jobs New York for the incredible honor of receiving the Build Back Better Award and for organizing today's virtual event. I'm just plain thrilled to be in the company of such esteemed fellow awardees, Senator Schumer, Nella Pineda-Marcon, and John Samuelsen, as well as the many activists and leaders you've already heard from today. Next time, I hope we can properly raise a glass to celebrate together in person. You know, as someone who has been in the fight against climate change for a long time, I know firsthand that the labor community is a critical partner in this battle. No one understands better than our brothers and sisters in labor that taking decisive action on climate strengthens our economy and it stimulates job creation. And Climate Jobs New York is doing tremendous work to tackle the dual crisis of climate change and long-standing racial inequality, while at the same time helping to scale up the industries of the future and deliver high-quality jobs that come with them. From making sure we're moving forward in a big way on offshore wind in New York, to accelerating energy efficiency and so much more. The labor community plays a critical role, and that role is more vital now than ever. As a nation, we're facing unimaginable challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic, a long overdue reckoning with systemic racism, and the devastating impact of climate change hitting close to home for all of us across the country, from wildfires to hurricanes. These multiple crises are hitting low-income and communities of color especially hard on all fronts as a result of long-standing inequality in our country. And that has to change. Now more than ever, we need to come together to create the future we want, one that benefits everyone and leaves no one behind. A future that embraces the challenge of climate change, that centers equity and racial justice, that allows everyone to prosper, and yes, one that understands that we must take care of the very people who are building that future, and that's our workers. We have to invest in the people working in clean energy so we can build the kind of future we all deserve together. And clean energy will be its foundation. These are the industries that will reduce the pollution that harms our health and fuels our climate crisis. And in the process, they'll boost the economy and create good jobs in every community. You know, millions of people in the U.S. are already working in the clean energy economy, making our homes more efficient, helping us get more power from the wind and sun, and building cleaner cars and modernizing our grid. That's thanks in large part to the hard work of cities and states like New York, where the foundation has been laid by embracing some of the most ambitious clean energy targets in the nation. But like nearly every corner of our economy, the COVID pandemic is taking a big toll, and it's putting people out of work. These are jobs that our country, and yes, families all across America, cannot afford to lose. We must invest now in our workers, who are the backbone of the very industries we need to build a better future. Our future and our children's future depend on it. Rest assured, we're in this fight together, and we're going to keep fighting like hell for a stronger, safer world. So let's go do it. And thanks again for this amazing recognition.
Thank you, Gina. And thanks for your amazing leadership. Our next honoree is John Samuelsen, President of the Transport Workers Union International. He's also a former president of TW Local 100 here in New York, TW's largest local union. He grew up in Brooklyn, or as we say, Brooklyn, and started working for the New York City Transit Authority in 1993, where he became a strong safety advocate and held a series of leadership positions before being elected president of the local and then president of the International Union. John was one of the founders of the Climate Jobs New York. He has been a leader in the transportation sector for electrification, and he has been a strong advocate for environmental action. I also want to recognize that the transportation workers that have been on the front line of the COVID-19 crisis, and to honor their service and their sacrifice. We're pleased to honor our friend, John Samuelsen.
How you doing? I'm John Samuelsen, International President of the Transport Workers Union. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm excited to be able to add a worker's voice to the discussion about clean jobs and just transition. The Transport Workers Union represents over 150,000 workers in public transportation, airlines, railroads, as well as the university, utility, and other sectors. We run the cable cars in San Francisco. We're the flight attendants at Southwest Airlines and JetBlue. We're the brakemen on Amtrak, and we're New York City transit workers, track workers like me, in fact, and thousands of other workers across America from coast to coast who move America every day. Today, I want to talk about our work in climate-friendly public transportation and our fight against anti-worker corporations that really don't give a rat's ass about the environment. The TW is leading campaigns across our country to raise our voice as cities test and implement new public transit technology and services. From bike share to autonomous vehicles to electric buses to contracting out of our jobs to app-based services like Uber and Lyft, rapid change is coming. We are fighting to get ahead of it and to use our voices to influence these changes. The TW is America's bike share union. As transit agencies and municipalities have added bikes to their transport networks, the TW has organized these workers around the country. America's biggest bike share systems are all Transport Workers Union. New York, Chicago, DC, Boston, San Francisco, and most other big cities are now represented by the TWU. Our union contracts mean that workers can be on the cutting edge of clean public transit and earn a decent living as well. Over the last few years, companies like Uber have tried to muscle their way into the bike share market, and they are rabidly anti-union. We cannot let anti-worker and anti-environment corporations divide us. Clean jobs should always be good jobs, and the best way to make sure that that happens is with a strong union contract, organizing into unions like the TWU. Across America, transit systems are converting to electric vehicle fleets. These changes will reduce pollution, but they will also cut mechanics' jobs. We don't oppose electric fleets, but the changeover has to be done the right way, protecting workers. A diesel engine is more complicated than an electric one. Transit agencies need a lot more mechanics for diesel buses than they do for an electric fleet. As public transit changes over to electric battery buses, we need to make sure that the new jobs stay unionized and that diesel mechanics get the training they need to keep working. As public transit changes over to electric battery buses, we need to make sure that the new jobs stay unionized and that diesel mechanics get the training they need to keep on working. That's why we have successful retraining programs in New York, Philadelphia, and elsewhere to ensure that green jobs are also good union jobs. But we don't accept all new technology. Autonomous vehicles and app-based rideshare companies are both a massive threat to workers. Some transit agencies are pushing for autonomous shuttles and buses that will pose a massive risk to both passenger safety and the good jobs that we currently have. We will fight any transit agency that tries to use unsafe vehicles or tries to use autonomous vehicle technology to displace workers and eliminate jobs, even if they're introducing electric transit vehicles. In Columbus, Ohio, the transit agency is using federal money to introduce unsafe autonomous electric shuttles. They had to shut one route down for months after the robotic vehicle slammed onto the brakes and injured a passenger. Autonomous vehicles are absolutely the wrong way to go. We have to make sure that human drivers are on every bus and train. We support all technology that improves safety and improves service delivery, but we will fight any job-killing transit technology, even if it claims to be environmentally friendly. We are also fighting Uber and Lyft. Transit agencies are offering subsidized Uber and Lyft rides using these companies' apps to sell services. That replaces good union jobs with underpaid rideshare drivers. And we've been able to defeat this effort on the part of transit agencies and municipalities by good old-fashioned fightbacks. Uber and Lyft abuse workers by misclassifying drivers as independent contractors rather than regular employees who can win union rights through organizing. The companies don't pay for the vehicles or healthcare or retirement. They push all of those costs onto the worker. These rideshare companies also clog the roads with cars that are empty and waiting for fares. Rideshare makes urban traffic and pollution way worse than it would normally be. We have to join together to fight against these anti-union polluters like Uber and Lyft. The TW is eager to build coalitions that support workers and support the environment. It doesn't have to be one or the other. During the pandemic and during every other public emergency, transit workers risk our lives to keep our passengers safe and our systems running. Our public transit systems are essential to moving people in the most environmentally friendly way possible. There's no public transit without transit workers, and we need to make sure that new technology and services don't poison the environment, cut our jobs, or help Wall Street and big tech companies make billions on the backs of workers. We are eager to work with green groups to improve our environment, but we're also especially eager to protect the rights that we have as workers. And again, both could be done. Thank you very much for having me. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you, John. And thanks for your ongoing support of climate jobs. Our final honoree tonight is none other than Senator Chuck Schumer. Senator Schumer is a close ally of labor, a fighter for New York, and a leader on green infrastructure investments. Just in the past couple of weeks, he introduced the Thrive Resolution, which envisions strong environmental action paired with good union jobs. Without further ado, let me introduce to you our friend, Senator Chuck Schumer.
Hi, everybody. This is Senator Chuck Schumer. And thanks to everyone at the summit for the invitation to speak, because it's an honor to be recognized alongside so many distinguished climate advocates. This year, our nation is experiencing a collision of crises, a pandemic, racial and economic injustice, and historic national disasters. We must address them together, particularly climate change, which is connected to each and every issue. Protecting our planet is a moral obligation, but it also impacts jobs, economic equality, and racial justice. That's why, if God willing, I become majority leader, we'll do everything in our power to take action on big, bold climate legislation, unleashing new opportunities and new jobs for millions of Americans. It's why Senate Democrats created the first ever Senate Special Committee on the Climate Crisis. It's why I introduced Clean Cars for America, a proposal to rapidly transition all new car sales to be clean by 2030. And it's why last week I joined Senator Markey and grassroots organizations to introduce the Thrive legislation, calling for millions of new jobs in renewable energy and making new investments in Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous communities. We need to embrace bold thinking. We need to help turn those ideas into reality, and you can help us do that. So with you leading the way, together, we're going to get this done. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Senator Schumer. And thanks again for your leadership on driving a smart, green recovery from this economic crisis. Folks, that concludes our program. Thank you all again for joining us today. And we look forward to working alongside you moving forward. Thank you and good night.